we'd like to welcome a very special guest for tonight's talk.
Wow, good to see you, sir.
You see, Rehman, we like putting little tricks on you in the last year.
He knows where I live.
Friends, very, very warm welcome to the 12th in the series of Nusantara Forum talks that Penang Institute and the Rehman Rashid have been organising over the last year or so. I'd like to ask please Xiaowen from the Penang Institute to say a few words of welcome to you. Xiaowen.
So welcome all of you tonight to be here listening to very prominent speakers here, journalists and biologists. Let's ask him later. Anyhow, so I really hope that you will have a very fruitful evening tonight. So I always like it short. I'm not going to spend more time on this because the key are both of them. So thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Xiaowen. So once again, a very, very warm welcome. As many of you will know who've attended our events in the past, these are spaces that Penang Institute and the bookshop, my bookshop, the Rupaya, situated just down the street, have initiated to try and open up space for interesting dialogue, a greater democratic space, and to grapple with some of the issues of the day. And it's with a huge amount of pleasure that Rehman Rashid, our main speaker here tonight, and Jafar Ismail, his publisher at Ghana Art, approached the bookshop to do the official Penang launch of, honestly, his wonderful book. I just finished reading it a couple of days ago, Peninsula, The Story of Malaysia. And we go very light on the ceremonials when it comes to book launches, but we like to think that we also have rather more substance in terms of opening up a forum, allowing interaction with the audience and so on. But we also like to be a little bit provocative. And I asked somebody who recently was in the news, Jafar Sadiq, sitting on my far left, if he would come and act as the respondent, the discussant, the interlocutor for Rehman Rashid. And thankfully, although he was very busy writing his own obituaries, yeah, exactly. I mean, for very, very esteemed publications like The Guardian in London and so on. It's a very good piece, by the way. And even though he suddenly took off, you know, we stalk our friends on Facebook, and suddenly I started seeing Japanese temples and scenes of Tokyo. But he said he'd come. So he just arrived back from Tokyo, drove all the way up from KL, and is with us here now. I don't know quite what state he's in or what time zone he's in, but I'm sure he's doing a marvelous job. And in the book, Rehman calls his father's generation, Generation 1, he calls himself the second generation, and perhaps within that particular schema, Jahaba fits as the third generation of Malaysian intellectuals and journalists and so on. I'd like to start off proceedings by asking the publisher, Rehman's publisher, from Ghana Art, Jafar Ismail, just to say a few warm words of welcome to the Penang audience. Jafar.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum, selamat sejahtera, good evening to everyone. Thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here. After all, Penang is the island of my childhood. Although I was born just across the pond. Anyway, I I started getting back to Penang through Ferdana Art. I had a gallery at White Base, and I lasted for a year. It's done very well. And now I'm back to KL to continue the visual arts business. And perhaps for 2016, one of the most significant things I've ever done is actually to be able to publish Rehman Rashid's Peninsula, A Story of Malaysia. Of course, I've known Rehman since we were schools. Of Rehman, you many inches taller than me. So, and I've also known Jahaba through various roles of Jahaba as a socialite and also as a journalist and the editor, most importantly as the editor-in-chief of the Malaysian Insider. Before I go any further, Saudara Malaysia, it's probably the first time I've met you sitting on the chair. The last time I've met you was at the escalator of the old Subang Airport, perhaps in 1982. You're walking down from the cafeteria, that's a long, long time ago. And now, can I hug you again? We're not trying to be an indie publisher, but we've got a Welshman, or half a Welshman. So, as I said to Gareth once, only the Welshman knows if he played by the blind side, he may actually score a try. Gareth.
Thank you, Jeffrey. He called you a socialite. I'll give you space for a comeback later. Now, and it's always good to try and create some affinities with people that you're about to introduce. He just called me half a Welshman. I'll pick up on that story in a minute because it's actually true. But let me try and create a few interesting affinities between Rehman and me. Yes, Rehman, there are actually some.
It's a lie. We're just good friends.
Now, I know you're not going to believe this. None of you are going to believe this. We were born 3 weeks apart from one another. No, I know, it's terribly difficult to believe. He somewhere along the peninsula, and me in the little red dot at the bottom of the peninsula. So, yeah, Singapore. Yes, indeed. Yes. And within 3 weeks of each other, it was a very auspicious year. Just don't tell them which year it was, Ray. If you read to the very last page of the book, you'll find out, okay? But you have to read to the last page of the book.
No, I'm just going to start there.
Okay. That's one little connection. Another little connection, therefore, we were both at university at more or less the same time. And guess what? In the same country. And I'm not talking the United Kingdom. No. Far more specific than that. Of course, he was down there in South Wales doing some very fishy stuff, marine biology. Whereas I was on the west coast at Apr'16, there you go. Reading Asian and African history. There you go.
That's my second choice.
Your second choice. I'm glad you got the first one. I'm glad Swansea accepted you.
But I didn't go there because it had the highest suicide rate of undergraduates in the United Kingdom. That was before they opened the cinema.
Yes. Apr'16 was very, very famous actually for having 42 chapels and 42 pubs. I'm not sure you can tell the difference. So, little affinities between the scoundrel and myself. A third little one is we both love cycling. I cycle every day. I think you do most days.
I've seen you.
You see me? I was
Wear a helmet for God's sake.
You know, in professional cycling teams, you know, there's the boss, the leader of the particular team.
Le directeur sportif.
Exactly. And then there are the drones, the workers, the ones, you know, when he has a puncture, I jump off the bike and give him my bike.
The domestic.
I'm a domestic. Okay? So this is another aspect of our relationship. Anyway, when I just decided to think about the title of tonight's talk, of course I took a line from the short and very moving foreword that Rehman wrote, and he says this just towards the end, in the last paragraph. I wrote this little book for those gone before me, so we all talk for those gone before me, and then he sent me a little note saying, yes, well, I just completed that sentence, and those yet to be. And I think that's a very important rider to that particular comment at the outset of the book. I'm going to do something I hadn't done for any of the 12 forums, and actually read a little passage from the book. Sorry, Ray, pull this one. Because I want to give you a sense, not only of the substantive contents, a book that starts with a sacking. There you go, what a great place to start. Something you two had in common. With due diligence. Starts with and actually it's the chapter on Apr'16 and Rehman talking about it, and it ends in a very, very poignant way. And some of you might have read that particular essay, or an earlier form of that essay, in remembrance of Rosemary. So the book itself is many, many layers. Parts of it are deeply personal. A lot of it lends a very steely eye to the contours of Malaysian politics, as Rehman has witnessed them over many, many decades. And I just wanted to read this. He's sitting out in the Midwest, in Iowa, September the 11th, 2001. And I, for one, also remember what I was doing on that day, as I also remember another September the 11th, 1973, when Pinochet overthrew the government of Salvador Allende before. And it just gives you a flavour, I think, of the style of writing and the way that the very personal and the political, a phrase that's too often a cliche, but I think in Rehman's writing really, really does resonate. And he's just been woken, he's blurry-eyed, the towers are crumbling. In fact, they witness on the television the second tower being attacked. And he's at a writer's workshop or writer's retreat in Iowa. And they're all just coming to terms with the reality or the surreality of what they've just seen. When the first tower collapsed, about a dozen of us were watching in silent shock. When the second one went down, we were bathing. A dozen writers and poets from as many countries in a room witnessing the end of the world as any of us had known it. Writers lost for words, poets for meaning, and playwrights for plot. We were stricken, anguished, multilingual, and loud. There were oaths and curses, recriminations and outrage. There were tears. We were the whole damned world, and nobody knew anything, except that everything had changed. It just gives you a sense, I think, of, sorry if this is slightly embarrassing, but a master of language, somebody who cares deeply about language, the meaning of language, what it means, and he says it as he finds it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very, very warm and welcome to Rehman Rashid.
It's lovely to see you this evening. How are you? My view of you guys has changed completely now. I didn't know about Apr'. This explains everything. Yes, indeed. It's wonderful. A fellow Welshman. Of course I am Welsh. I was born on a coal mine. I love it. They're unique people. Anyway, it's lovely to see you. And we're not here to talk about Wales. But dolphins and other cetaceans, possibly. How do we do this? Java, what do we do? Do we open this to, where do I begin?
Take 30 minutes.
Oh my God, have you got that much time? In that case, how can I tell you how this book came to be and why it's been 23 years since the last one? This is not, I'm a reporter. I'm nothing more, and I'm nothing less. And I don't invent things, I don't concoct things. I can't sit in a J.K. Rowling chair, which was previously worn by J.R. Tolkien. And I mean, I don't know how it's done. I think they're magnificent. I'm not that kind of a writer, I'm a reporter. And reporters tell stories. And I think the alpha and omega for me is stories. And you need to wait for the stories to tell themselves. History needs to unfold in order for us to see the story. How do we know how it's going to work out? I'll give you, well, this will sum it up. A Malaysian journey, which some of you have had the grace to acquire tonight, was published in January 1993. Can you hear me?
Yes.
In 96 or 7, 96, 97, I met V.S. Naipaul, Sir William Naipaul, who was in Malaysia for researching Beyond Belief, which was his sequel to his Among the Believers on Islam and the modern world. We met in some scraggy, tepi longkang, warung, Sarawak teh in brickfields. I think our host wanted him to have a bit of local colour. That was the wrong place to go. Because the colours there are shit brown, mud, grey, basically horrible. And Naipaul is a dapper man. He beautifully dressed in double-breasted brass button blazer and cravat, and his companion at the time. And we talked about this, and he said 4 years between books is too long. You have to force yourself to write. I thought about that. You have to force yourself to write. That writing doesn't actually just come out. You need to work at it. It's like sculpting with your fingernails sometimes. And I remember thinking, the thought crossed my mind even as he said it. I thought maybe that explains the misery of your writing. I mean, he writes like an angel. His paragraphs are the most diamond polished and cut that perhaps I have ever read. But we know that there is a deepness. There is a deep melancholy. I think of it as a melancholy, but I think he resents it. There is that edge to Naipaul that I think comes from writing being not a terribly enjoyable thing. It's a painful thing. It takes so much out of you. I actually lost 5 kilograms writing this book. But you think about what he does and what I do, and he was in his journalism kick at the time, journalism phase. He was doing Among the Believers, Finding the Center. He was doing a lot of the Crocodiles of Yamoussoukro, one of the most wonderful pieces of, well, Naipaul, Rehman Rashid, Bruce Chatwin, Paul Theroux are 3 of the names that come to mind of 20th or late 20th century, second half of the 20th century writers who made it clear that travel writing is now political journalism. Otherwise, write a brochure and send it to the tourism board. But had I taken V.S. Naipaul's advice or exhortation and written another book, say 95, 96, what would I have done with the Anwar thing? What would I have done with the Asian financial crisis? What would I have done with everything changing overnight? Okay, yeah, get the printers to print out the addendum. Oh dear, all is changed utterly, wait another 3 years for another book. No, you've got to wait for the story to unfold. And I am not a writer of books. I didn't set out in life to write books. I am at my, I'm sorry about this, I feel that I'm at my best in the 800 to 1,000 word column. I now realize maybe I was wrong about that. However, I loved being in the moment, I loved being in the day, and I love the idea that something that happens today I can think about, research, and write in one day, and tomorrow you read it, and it'll play, it'll pertain, it'll be germane to the events of your lives when you wake up in the morning and read the newspaper. Now this is over. We don't work in little discrete time packets of 24 hours anymore. I'm sorry about that. It was useful. But now it's a seamless, timeless continuum. It's sleepless, it's constant, it's always on. That's not really where I belong. I need to have perspective. And that's taken more time. It's ironic. I could have done this probably quicker if not for the internet. Because the internet increased the volume. You see? I wasn't just dealing with a single hose of water spraying on the garden every morning and making sure the plants get the optimum amount. This was a tsunami and it's constant now. So one doesn't channel, one doesn't filter, and one cannot alter the continuum of events now. One has to surf, which was not something wasn't a metaphor or an analogy that came to mind as to what I did in the earlier years of my career. The tsunami is on, and whether or not we're going to drown, you and me, Java, whether or not we're going to drown or be spun around like flotsam, like bits of styrofoam, or whether you're going to, you see the point I'm trying to make is we no longer shape events. They now shape us. And our role as observers and commentators is changed. Now we ride the wave. And when does it end? I don't know. How do you get off the conveyor belt? In the end, having come to recognize and accept that there is no more linearity in life. Stories don't have beginnings, middles, and ends anymore. You can begin with once upon a time in a way I did begin once upon a time, but you can't end happily ever after. Realize something about fairy tales, ladies and gentlemen. The fairy tales always end at the altar. They get married and they live happily ever after. You lion mother. Notice that the myths that we construct end. We need to have them end with optimism and hope. That keeps us going as people, as insan, as souls. We need to believe that tomorrow is another day, God with the wind. How do I manage this? In the end, the only linearity I think I have left is that of my own life. I was born, I live, and I will die. And that's all that matters now. That's all I have. It's a very thin and almost specious thing, which I address in the book in chapter 3 on my strange thinking in Bermuda when, what would I do? My father died at 38, I was 36, what would I do if I only had to? It's strange, it's morbid, it's a little masturbatory as well, it's incredibly self-indulgent, but it does help focus. You don't have infinite amounts of time. So, in the end, we make the call, an arbitrary moment that says, enough, I'm not going to bother for this, I'm not going to wait for this story to play out any further, I'll get it now, and I'll leave it to Jahabar to do the rest. But he might have to wait another 20 years as well. Actually, I don't think it's going to be another 20 years, I think it's going to be another 2. But we'll come to that later if you're interested. The time, the ticking. Can you hear it? Oh man, can you smell the almond smell of cyanide? Yes. Things are happening. So this is, therefore, it became a much more personal book than even my first. And certainly more personal than anything I've ever written in journalism, because this is me now. It's not about supporting anything or representing a newspaper or this establishment or that opposition. You know, it's not. It's just my story. But because of the peculiar life that I've had to live, the peculiar bloodlines I carry, my mixed ancestry, the mixed religions, I think there was a particular day, if I really put my mind to it, I could maybe come up with the exact day, but it would have been about 25 years ago, I guess, when I decided I could not disentangle the strands of my DNA, so how could I even attempt to disentangle the strands that came with it? I mean, what came with it? I will not make a choice, and I made that as a conscious decision, and I don't even recommend it. It's a tough, when you decide, I'm not going to choose between mother and father. I'm not going to choose between this or that. They are both mine. And I will embrace them, I will accept them, I will celebrate them in myself. And if that alienates me from both sides, so be it. Because Malaysia is all sides. All sides. We are a kaleidoscope. We are pick up the facets, multifaceted. A diamond shines with its own brilliance because of its many facets. light goes in and then bounces around inside and can't get out because none of the angles conduce to that. And so it goes, and that's Malaysia. That's Malaysia. We have brilliance, we have beauty, we have genius, but it's contained because it bounces off the inner surfaces of our neuroses, our separatism, our differences. In some strange way, this antithesis of the idea of Satu Malaysia, this is the opposite of that. This is 1000 Malaysia, 10,000 Malaysia. Sebenarnya 30 juta Malaysia. Not one, many. I am legion, I contain multitudes. Thank you. And I write for that. And I wanted to give me some pity, because it's an incredibly lonely place to be. And that was hard. That was hard. It's difficult to get through life alone. I no wife, no kids, no family. I live in a lovely little part of the world, Kuala Kabaru, in the hills of Hulu Selangor. I have a shop house in town there, and it's a wonderful sanctum sanctorum. I wrote the Malaysian journey there, and now 23 years later, another book is coming. So Kuala Kabaru has become Kuala Kabaru for me. But the wonderful thing about living in a small town is the purity of who we are, and the realization that we are all thinkers, and more than thinkers, we are knowers. So my neighbors in this small town, in the rural areas of Hulu Selangor, have a tremendous sense of self-awareness, self-knowledge, and self-understanding. It's remarkable. With that stability and rootedness, they feel secure among each other. There is no sense of insecurity of interlopers, of outlanders, of who, siapa orang lama, siapa orang baru, because they understand themselves. And to my mind, turn your minds away a little bit from that barnyard that passes for politics in this country today, and remind yourselves that now is the third generation. We're entering the fourth generation of an independent Malaysian population. The maturity that we have achieved, the sense of identity, rootedness, the sense of place that we have achieved, is now incomparable to anything that formed the basis of our political and our social-political system. Malaysia is now, I'm sorry to say, less than the sum of its parts, because the parts of Malaysia have matured and evolved and developed more than the whole. This is why the Satu Malaysia idea it has no traction. It has no traction. It's not true. And yet, is that a terrible thing? I don't think it should be true. I think our beauty is in this multifarious nature of ourselves. The difficulty is how to articulate that. And I felt that as my life has moved on, I'm a retiree now, 5 years retired, I'm into my 60s, I get 50% discounts on train tickets, but then I ride a $20,000 bicycle, so what does it mean? And I felt a certain frustration that I've grown old now, and it's gone like this. It's gone and unrecognizable from when I was 21, when I came out, and when I was 25 and I became a journalist. So I thought, this is my last will and testament. This is my last testament. I do not prescribe anything for the future. There are 2 sections in this book that did not make the final draft. One was a chapter on women, which I thought was a little bit, I better not. No, don't go there. And then there was an epilogue, which I did write, looking forward. It was speculative. It was, if this happened, then that will come. If they do this, they do that. And I thought, this is rubbish. You're a reporter, don't forget it. You may write well, but you're a reporter. You're not a prophet. And reporters can be prophets, but only when they report well, because the future is writ in the present. And astute and observational journalists can possibly detect what might be. But that was not my intention. My intention was simply to paint a portrait and to tell one story. And that is why the subtitle of the book is A Story of Malaysia, just as the title of my first book was A Malaysian Journey, the article A. There are people who do not write but think that they can write about writers or talk about writers or slide us off in their English lit classes. One of the earlier responses to this thing came from one of these people. He calls it A Story of Malaysia, but it's a story of Rehman Rashid with bits of Malaysia on the side. And you know why he said this? Because he only read chapter 1 and 2. But they think they know. I don't know what to do. There's nothing a writer can do. And we shouldn't really. If you ever write a book, don't ever respond to your Twitter critics and your Facebook. Don't talk back to them. It's not your role. And now I'm very happy to say that the social media has taken care of it. Within seconds, there was somebody coming up with a rebuttal and saying, "No, you're wrong. It's a story of Malaysia with bits of Rehman Rashid on the side." And even that, so he's not putting them there as condiments. They recognize that when I do write extremely personally, it is germane to the story. I don't waste words and waste your time and your money with just this, what everybody else does, which is basically whack. It's part of the story, even if it doesn't seem that way. For example, when I write about my dear departed wife, Rosemary, and people can say as well, you open up the book, chapter 1 is Apr'16. Chapter 1 is all about me bitching and moaning about being fired and all those nasty people and how they bullied me. And then you turn to chapter 2 and it's New York, 9/11. What are we doing there? And then you turn to chapter 3 and it's Bermuda, 1991. Oh my God, you can't get any further away from Malaysia without falling off the bloody planet. And then you turn to chapter 4, it's Rosemary, what's her name? So it takes a little while for you, if you look through the contents, you're wondering, what is this? But you'll know, and I really hope you will read my book and get beyond chapter 1. And then you will see that I don't know how I did this. It's only now, lately, with your responses, your reactions, and this feedback that's coming in, that I'm beginning to get the dimensions of it. I didn't plan this. I didn't know what the next chapter would be as I was writing. As I was halfway through one chapter or 2/3, then the next chapter would hove into view, as it were, emerging from the fog of, and then I would see where to go from there. And it would often take me in unexpected directions, and although I see the next chapter, and I wouldn't be able to see the one after that. So it was an adventure of exploration for me, and I once again was reminded of something which I think younger writers should bear in mind when it starts to really kick in. You are not actually the creator, you are a channel, you are a conduit, you are a saluran, you're a channel. And something is working through you. And it's a magical thing. It's a bit like this, talking ad lib, I don't have notes, I'm just babbling on. You have to stop me if I start to bore you. He's given me a few minutes, so I'll take them. And what appears here is not linear. Just as I told you just now, the world and information and life is no longer linear, it's expansionary. So my book doesn't have a beginning and a middle and an end. In fact, people are saying that once they've done their first reading, then they go back randomly and find that each bit of my book is something of a hologram of the whole. But you won't get the full picture unless you have the patience or the application to complete it. And then I hope you will realize that this is like a pearl that I tried to create. There's a seed, and that was the passing of someone dear to me. And then the story accretes in layers and layers and layers. So, when I received a phone call from Tan Sri Halim Sa'ad, after he had read the chapter entitled Bumi Pushas, I get a phone call. Encik Rehman, Tan Sri Halim would like to speak to you. Oh, certainly. Hello, Rehman. Tan Sri, am I in trouble with you? No, but you didn't do enough research. Why you focus on me? There are many others that were involved in that amazing decade of the 90s, the Billionaire Boys Club. He had not read the rest of the book. So I don't know whether he will, but if he will, he will find that he is referenced without necessarily being named, but he's referenced in chapter 1, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 17, you're all over the place. So I hope you will approach this like It's a box of chocolates. You know, you never know what you're going to get. So take it all, and then do something about blood pressure and diabetes. You know, that's the story. I'm very happy that I managed to produce this. Therefore, I was there to take this where we needed to go, I guess. But I cannot say that, as I told Mr. Lim, my name's on the front, my face is on the back, my words are in the middle, and they're all yours. Me? No. I will have to continue the way I have been. So it's going to be a lonely life. I'll carry on. It's all right. I may live a bit longer. There may be other books in the pipeline. There is one more that I have already written. And that was the book that was the original for Peninsula. I didn't start to write Peninsula. I wanted to write a little book for my little town. A little homily, a little poesy. Pretty book. Pictures, drawings, art. And it became this. Now this is going to go and take on, and I hope it will live a long, long time and prosper. People ask me who I wrote it for. I say Malaysians 10 years of age and younger and their grandchildren. Because they may need to know why they're living in caves and hunting iguana. What happened amid the ruins of these wonderful, once splendid monuments? So it's not for now, it's not for me, but it is for my country, and it is everything I love. For what it's worth, you know. So, I mean, seeing you here tonight, my heart is exploding, and my brain isn't even really functioning right now. So I'm going to stop, and I'm going to pass over to Jahaba and yourselves to shake me a little bit. Let me address anything that you may need to know. It's not just about writing books, or let it not even be about me, but let's talk about what exercises you and what he and me can contribute to this discourse. Here are two journalists of two generations. There's me, old school to the nth degree, right? I remember hot metal as not being musical. I remember lead, I remember type. I remember why uppercase is uppercase and lowercase is lowercase. Java, digital. Java 24/7. So I think we can offer, ladies and gentlemen here, an opportunity to, a perspective, you know, Java. Yeah. So may I'm sorry, may I just let this go now and see where we can go in a free and easy thing?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think you know that Rehman is the older generation and I'm the younger generation. Younger generation can't write beyond 140 characters or Facebook update. So I'll try to be a bit longer than that. I read Rehman's book on a flight to Tokyo. Flight is 7 hours. I finished the book in 6 hours. I spent another hour going through the parts that struck me, as I was telling Rehman just now, that it seemed very sad. And he says, you know, we're journalists. We're not in the happy ending business. And that's true. But there's one chapter. You have to go through it. You'll find it. You'll find it. And it links to when Rehman went off to study as a young man after school, after MCKK. He went off to study in England. And it links to that. He finally meets the smartest girl in his class who bested him in physics. And she became a doctor. She studied medicine. But she came back, had 10 kids. Her husband had died, and she was practicing homeopathy. And that to me was Malaysia, you know, in the 70s. As a little kid, he was already in England. A country that was young, brash, and about to punch above his weight class, you know, science and technology, that was the way to go. A greater economy, moving forward, Dr. Mahathir, taking us and dragging us into the 21st century. And then what happened? You know, this lady's story in Kuala Terengganu is a story of Malaysia. We were going forward, and then we went sideways. You know, it's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing, in a sense, for a country like us. And where do I come in this? I was born in '68,
a year before 69 race riots. When there was a race riot, I was actually in India. My dad's from India. My mom is Chinese. Like Rehman, we are Malaysians. We have no race. Our race is Malaysian. We are not in any racial society. I think both of us are used to having a melange for our breakfast of kway teow, nasi lemak, dosai, some bread, butter. So this is the Malaysia that we grew up in. And today, what I do, or what I did until 2 weeks ago, was surfing and curating bits and bobs to make sense of it for our readers who no longer buy the news trade stands where both Rehman and I worked before. I still wouldn't advise you to buy. I'd advise you to buy the Star just for the ads. But there is, newspapers serve a purpose. If you want to know what's at the supermarket, but if you go online where we are just basically signpost showing you the way. This is an interesting story, you should read this. Top 10 things you should know today. That's what we were doing, and we're trying to make sense of it. What Rehman would take in a day, when the news cycle was 24 hours, he made sense of something and he brilliantly captured it in Scorpion Tales. I don't know how many people remember Scorpion Tales. I grew up on Scorpion Tales. He would digest it well, and then say, this is what it means to me, and this puts context and perspective. In the internet world, we only have 3 hours, because he's right, you have a tsunami of things going on. What are you interested in? I found out the experience in Malaysia is, seriously, no one's interested in politics. Complete waste of time. No offense to Mr. Lim Hitsian. Politics, he's a journalist. 50 years in politics now. The thing is, you have politics dominating the discourse, national discourse. But Rehman is right. Everyone else has a story to tell. How does it resonate with them? How does the real world resonate? And I get a snapshot of that again from Twitter, because people can't go beyond 140 characters. Or Facebook status, or pictures of clouds, coffee, and cats. And this tells you why Harian Metro is popular, because people need the distraction. Real life is bad as it is. Seriously bad. You don't know what to do. Politicians want to put you in a cookie cutter, one Malaysia, or Islam Hadari, or, we've had so many slogans every Merdeka, all of us who grew up in Malaysia, every year we have this almost North Korean kind of thing every year. Singapore has it too, but they have really cute North Korean art for that. We don't have that kind of art. And lately, if you read again Rehman's book, he talks about exploring his religion, and it's fine. I think we have to explore religion, but today in Malaysia, as a Muslim, I struggle to be a Muslim. We are being told what a Muslim is, right? We are being told every day, this is bad, this is seditious. If you are not loyal to your leader, you are not a Muslim, if you are a Muslim. So you get all this chatter. So we are a country where everyone's chattering, well, no one's listening, right? So if you do get a chance to buy this book, I bought a couple of copies, so it's 3 copies less. Please read it, right? And also, if possible, once after you read Rehman's book, read each other's lives.
Yeah.
Get to know each other well. And I think, small town, big town, we're all actually small town people. Kuala Lumpur, where I come from, is really small.
Yeah.
It's only 3 streets.
That's right.
Batu Road, Parliament Road, and the road between both, which used to be where the brothels were, Raja Laut. So, I think this is the thing that we are losing as Malaysians. We are not listening to each other, right? So if you have a chance to get this book, you read it, you understand his life, and how events from his father's time, who loves books, his father loved books, words, how it impacted him. How events in the 70s and 80s and 90s and his globe-trotting life in Hong Kong and Bermuda, how it impacted him, how he views Malaysia, and the policies that Malaysia went through. You know, we've only had one government. We have the world's longest ruling government. You know, it used to be Mexico and Japan.
You know why that I wrote this book for those gone before me? Because they all died unhappy. Right? Sorry, Jawa, let me get back to this. To Razak, to Rehman, my dad, so many now. The Malaysia they wanted, those who went before me, is not the one we have today. The one they wanted is the one I celebrate, it's the one I uphold, it's the one I cherished all my life. It doesn't exist, it exists in the heart. It's in there, I mention it. But for those who went before me, because they did not go happy, they all died unhappy. Those of my father's contemporaries who are still alive in their 90s now, well, God bless him, one of them, my Uncle Rahim, wept when he saw this. He says he was happy that I had managed to produce this before he went, that he could see this. It's for them. The Malaysia they wanted was so much more what you would probably recognize as, yeah, that's the one, that's it, that's the one. Penang has got this something. It's not a Malaysian thing in Penang. Penang is Penang, always has been, and always will be. There's a separate, a distinct flavor and identity to this place. But the idea of multiracialism as not quotas, not tokenism. You must have this lot and that lot and that lot, put them on a billboard. That's the Malaysian. No, it isn't. It's in our genetics, it's in our culture, it's in our food, it's in the air we breathe. That multiplicity, that multitudinous Malaysia was so obvious between the years 1957 to 1965. Malaysia was born out of that conviction, which is why we could accept Sabah and Sarawak. The only commonality, can you imagine this? The only commonality for the constituents of Malaysia was the English language! Think what else united Sabah, the British North Borneo Company under Arthur Dent, chairman, 100 years. No, not quite that. Sarawak, 100 years under the White Rajah dynasty of James, Charles and Charles Violent Brooke. 100 years. 3 generations, 3rd generation curse king. What united the 17 tribes of Sarawak and the 20 tribes of Sabah? English? Amazing, isn't it? And here we are now, and people are mocking my word use. And people are saying, why you don't think English? Apa baca? Orang tak kata bahasa Inggeris lagi nak. Dia dah jadi bahasa orang putih. I come back to the newspapers in 2002. I'm walking through the editorial floor. I hear somebody say, cakap bahasa orang putih, speaking English. I stopped dead in my tracks. And I'm tall. I stopped dead in my tracks and I dress corporate, tie, jacket. Ooh, man. Through his Japanese boots. I'm 6'4" in the office. Aku ni orang putih ke? Kau ingat apa ni putih? The offense I felt at suddenly English, which has been with us for centuries, is now the white man's tongue again? Why? Why? Reverse novelty, perhaps. An idea that, no, I think that's why I mentioned Yukio Mishima in the Japanese right-wing nationalist poet. Wonderful writer, but he had that conviction. Any Japanese who learns a single word of another language erases that much of Japanese culture. And I began to see that kind of jingoism, xenophobia, this kind of chauvinistic, self-contained, self-referentialism coming into our country with the advent of Malay. This is why there is this bleakness in my book. There is this sadness in my book. My father's generation were pretty cool. They failed because they were arrogant to a certain extent. They did not think that the masses would be that much of a problem. And that's always the problem with people who presume to know what the masses think. They never consider themselves as part of those masses. You notice? Oh, we have a trouble. Ignorance is a terrible, terrible thing. Why? When it's always the educated that cause all the trouble. You see? So it's the bleakness I feel is because I really do feel it was my generation that screwed up. We split. I explore some of the causes. What I wanted to do with the Peninsula was to try and inform how and why all this happened. Not whether it was right or wrong almost. I know my biases come through. My secularism is something that I am proud of and that I will retain. I cannot choose one over another. What do you do when you grow up as a Malaysian who cannot choose among anybody? Well, you accept them all, or you reject them all equally. But whatever it is, you create an equidistance, an equilateral relationship with all your people. And when you can get to that level, it works. Because it didn't work in '69, it didn't work in the '70s. I believe the 21st century was when it ought to come to play. Now, we are a decade and a half into the 21st century now. We're already halfway through the second decade of the 20th century. I like to see our political conundrums, this collapse, this loss of faith, this oh my God, this banality and cynicism has actually been the last dying throes of a dinosaurian, of an ossified, fossilized mindset, thinking or system that is now being left behind. I'm not going to go for revolution. I'm not going to advocate that. I will never advocate the destruction or elimination of any sector of Malaysia, including the ones that you despise, because I also see them as victims of history just like the rest of us. Sometimes if I look at the present Prime Minister, I find that there is a certain historical inevitability in his career path. The things that happened to him, the decisions, they were almost not his decisions. They were, some have greatness, no, sorry, some have mediocrity thrust upon them, some are born mediocre, and some attain mediocrity. So the cynicism, this, oh my God, this horrible, I think it's completely despair. I think it's despair. I think it's like, oh, the hell with all of this. Let's just feather our nests, roll up what take what you can get, and ciao. You know, I get this kind of cynical feeling that what we're witnessing here is the end of politics as we have known it in Malaysia. I think Saudara also, the things that we have been hearing coming out of the Citizens' Declaration, Save Malaysia, impetus, the impulse that is going in that direction. I think we are possibly in our lifetimes we're going to see this change. But what is this change? A change of government? No. A change of party? Bad. Come on, you've had the opposition out there long enough for you to know that we're still the same. So what is this? There is no sector of Malaysia that is good and another sector that is bad. So if you get these guys out, these guys go to jail, everything's going to be fine like hell. You know. So what is it then? PRU14, the next general elections are coming in 2 more years, maybe 18 months. You know something about developed democracies? The more developed a society, the lower the voter turnout. Yeah. Even in mature democracies such as, you know, big countries, America, Canada, Australia, urban, mercantile, central metropolitan areas, 50% turnout is considered, ooh, they're excited. The more backward areas, in America, for example, in Savannah, Georgia, you will get 82% turnout. In DC or New York, you'll be lucky if you get 40, 45. London doesn't even bother anymore. They just go for Boris. It's interesting. At the other end of that bell curve, you have Zimbabwe, 98%. Uganda, 100%.
Singapore?
Singapore. Saddam Hussein's Iraq, 103%. How was that? I don't know. You see what I'm getting at? Why? Because it is when you are immobile, poor, hemmed in, you need that. The minute you get a good income going, middle class, you're upwardly mobile, you don't need the government to help you out. In fact, you're beginning to feel that the government kind of needs you. And that is political, social-political maturity. So I do not see that we need to change regimes, jail this guy, free that guy, put them in the same jail, see what happens. It's not that. We get beyond the politics of personality into the politics of process, if you like, but we're not going to, do not expect this revolutionary change where suddenly UMNO is gone, Malay chauvinism is gone, Chinese bigotry and chauvinism is gone. Oh, come now, we're never going to change that much. But it doesn't matter because the manifest truth is, look at us, we're not in civil war. Isn't that amazing? Given the rhetoric that you're hearing? We're not ripping each other apart. We're not going out there and looking for somebody of another faith to beat the shit out of. Why? Because we've grown up. In fact, we've grown old. Well, our politics remains in this Melayu, Cina, Indo, punya kindergarten, 1947 punya concept. So I think, I started to lose it as a journalist when I could no longer tell the difference between what I think would happen and what I hope will happen. And you've got to make a distinction there, you know. When somebody, especially as a journalist, a reporter, make it very clear, what do you think will happen and what you hope will happen are not often the same. So I don't know whether I hope this will happen, but what I think will happen is for the next elections, and we'll see, we've got 2 years, you know, because that's a long time. It's an eternity in politics, yeah, for the present situation. Oh, come now, Switzerland, 6 other countries are investigating our Prime Minister. 6! The newspapers that are coming up, the Wall Street Journal, suddenly we're having to call them Zionists? No, it's, this is 2 years, is going to be like an infinity for this present ferment. Now, what I imagine is going to happen is, from what I see out there, what I detect, people are fed up. People are pissed off. Nobody's really angry with anybody else. They're angry with the situation. It's debilitating. So what I expect will happen will be a turning away from the ballot. I expect to see a decreasing voter turnout. I expect to see people shun this thing and decide that they will not want to be responsible or feel responsible for whatever is to come. I myself have never missed a vote in my adult life, except for the one where I was the elections of '78. I was getting my degree, so I wasn't here for that. Although I was old enough, theoretically, to vote at that time. But I have never missed a vote since, and yet, for the past 2 elections, I have disgusted myself by voting for a tree. I came out of my shop house in Kuala Lumpur, PRU, the last one, 2013, and somebody had nailed Undila Poko. Why? Because the British brought democracy and universal suffrage to a bunch of illiterate peasants and coolies, people who couldn't read and write. So they produced, if you wanted to stand for election, you had this umbrella symbol, goat symbol, keychain, you know, symbols, and sign language. You couldn't put your name, you had to choose a symbol. And we are doing it in 2013. 21st century, we're still Undila Poko. And as God is my witness, I did. Trees have never done me any harm. I like them. But I think it is farcical. And of course that was a wasted vote. That was a vote that just disappeared. Went to some environmentalist kid, I don't know, an agitator. I think he's joined an NGO or something since. This is farcical, this is not democracy, this is not sensible. It doesn't produce results that are valid, that count, that mean something to the rest of us. And that is why politics is what it is in this country, this party-based system. I do not see that this can be transformed. I don't see that it can be revolutionized or reformed. I think it can be ignored. I think it can be ignored. I think we are there now. And I think those who are still absolutely and utterly helpless without their political parties, they are actually the ones who are keeping those parties alive and afloat. So we must almost look at our political parties as charitable organizations for the unemployable. Via prima, what do you call that? I guess the people who can't string two sentences together in either language, or any language. Hold on a second, I know that for a fact. You know, why do you suppose they ask me to write that bloody speeches? Why do you suppose they're getting the best writers that I've ever met in this country to ghostwrite their speeches and write their columns, and then compile them in books with their ridiculous faces on the cover? Why do they do that? Have you noticed that Marina Mahathir, Tuan Chai, Bakri Musa, Kalimullah Hassan, all put their bloody faces on the front? Oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm gorgeous and I put it on the back. When you put your picture on the cover, you're selling yourself, don't lie. And why do you have to sell yourself? Because there's nothing in there. These are compilations of columns published, these are compilations of their Facebook status updates, their little letters to each other, their homilies, they might have been published. They're actually completely irrelevant. If you read them, you cannot make head or tail of them because they need to be contextualized. Because this is journalism and it's commentary. So this is cheap-ass, low-class, low-grade, non-publishing rubbish as far as I'm concerned, and they put their faces on the front. One time puts his face on the front and the word bullshit next to it. Oh, stupid! No. So I think that, yes, there is this vanity thing, there is this self-aggrandizement thing, name bigger than title, and I think it's done us a disservice. And they're also eyes downcast. Yeah. No, it's this. I'm selling my story and my writing, and it is a book. None of this has been published before. That stuff, I don't think it counts, frankly, and I will never do it. If I were to compile my career writing, it would be 1,500 words, 2 volumes, 750-page books, box set, bigger than Lee Kuan Yew. But I think it's cheap, and I don't think it does a service. I think it's a souvenir thing. I think it's good for your fans, and it makes good stocking fillers and stuff. But we're not there, we're nowhere there. If I have now reached this age, and I still have to do this, and no one else has done it in 23 years, then something's wrong. The success of a Malaysian journey, I feel, should have inspired younger people to go further with that. Take this, go and wander around your country, meet people, write about their story, and I have to say some did. Some Karim, with his Ceritala series. Many others, I think, went out there, and it was good for them. Oh yes, it was definitely good for them. They learned so much, they got fit, they enjoyed, they learned other languages, they learned other cultures. It was good for them, but something stops in the writing. And I think that's because you need a journalist to do this, Java. You need a reporter to do this. You need a narrator. You need someone to introduce stories to you and then tell stories to you. You don't want people. Malaysians, come on, I've been writing in English at a pretty arcane level, a bit occult for some time. And I'm constantly, my whole career has been attended by the English is declining, English is declining, nobody's reading it, it's down to 5%, 4% of the population cares. Why then have 3,000 copies of Peninsula flown in 2 weeks? You know, I mean, it's unheard of that for a first edition to sell out before the launch. It's because those few Malaysians who do read, they do read. And they really love to read. Now Malaysians read, but they read hard-headedly. There's no frivolity. They don't like that. Waste your time with romance, chick lit, bodice rippers. But if you give, look what sells. Self-help sells. Self-help books sell. How to Make a Million, Azizi Ali. Oh my God. Open the book, page 1, do as I do. Write a book titled How to Make a Million. It'll sell. No, they're hard-headed. They're not romantic people so much. You know, but you give them something that they find interesting, appealing. They will read, they will buy, they will keep, they will tell their friends, they will buy multiple. I mean, you're wonderful, you people, because you value what you have and you know that it is fairly rare. In fact, it's becoming increasingly rare in this country. I have absolute faith in this. Now, people have called me elitist. I work in a foreign language. I cater to a highbrow market. No, I cater to leaders, CEOs, leaders of countries. I don't give a damn about the masses. They will follow their bosses. And if the boss is coming to work with my book under his arm, who is going to buy that book? All of them. No, this is the irony. We all want to feel egalitarianism, we're all rising up, we're all equal, we're all equally strong, but no, we're still sheep and shepherds. We need leadership. And that's why we have persisted with this longest running ruling party, with these people who are presidents and prime ministers for life, because we need them. We might as well accept that as a reality and then work on the leaders. Change them. We can do that. But I think a more inclusive Malaysia could be a more fragmented Malaysia. We've got the critical mass now. So I'm thinking maybe a landscape of coconut shells stretching to the horizon in all directions. We all live in our little comfort zones. Is it so bad? Religions are not threatened. Cultures are not threatened. People are not threatened. We don't have to be friends. This is ironic. When Mahathir Mohamad became Prime Minister in 1981, the first interview he gave to an international organization, the Time magazine, early 1982, and to that magazine he said, Malaysia is a country, lovely to see you, sir. We'll meet again. Mahathir told Time magazine that Malaysia is a country where nobody can be too happy. Because we are so fragmented, so different and so diverse, that if any particular community was too happy, somebody else would be very unhappy. It's like Mahathir's words. I thought that was pretty hard-headed, but pretty clear. But the idea of Malaysia's default, of Malaysia's optimal setting being one of an equity of unhappiness, it worked for his administration, 23 years. I don't think anybody was very happy with that. But look, we were 4 times richer by the end of it than we were at the start. You know, I mean, quadrupling per capita income in 10, 15 years, that wasn't bad. But nobody's happy. So we get in this country if you like, the dynamic tension, and that holds the center, and that provides that impulse, that strength. And I'm thinking that that is where we're going to go. A multitudinous socio-political structure, which then, it still harbors this monolithic, single-party dominance of parliament, if you like, or political process, but its relevance to people's lives diminishes. That is it. So it's not a question of attacking those that we don't like. It's a question of drawing a line in the sand and saying, thus far shall you come, and no further. The book of Job, I believe. Thus far and no further. Protect what is precious to us, because we have seen the consequences of what happens when we completely alter the thinking of a single generation. This is where the Islamism came up, but here, where the Hishamuddin Raisism came up. So, Malaysia wants to grow, wants to evolve, wants to mature, but has done so in violent and unpleasant ways of enmity. Zero-sum equation thinking. If you've got something, that means I don't have it. I want it, which means, how do I know I've got it? You don't. You know, I know this is not going to happen through political leadership, some messianic leader coming in. Messianic leaders make messes. I think this is going to come from the maturation of our people. Critical mass, 30 million people, we've achieved it. Each community now, even the Indians, the lowest major community, the smallest major Malaysian community, is 3 million strong, and that's enough now to generate its own, the beginning of its dynamic own internal economy. I never thought I would ever say this in my life, but I'm saying it now. I'm not sure unity is such a big deal. I think it's time for people to find integrity in themselves and stay within that, and then the nation respects them, as opposed to compelling them to respect a nation that they cannot see themselves in. So a humility of a nation to allow its people to rise. I love that idea. I would love to work on it in the future. Collective responsibility and collective blame. I'm tired of hearing the political parties blame. My book will explain to you why I see our political parties as our fault. We created them. I do not see them as having created our divisions today. I see that we were divided to begin with, and they worked for it. You can't blame that in a democratic, you can't condemn that in a democratic system. They have to reflect their people. But unfortunately, maybe it came a bit too soon. Because the people that they reflected were not really ready yet. They still had those tiny little frozen ideas about each other. Like you go, Indu Busu, China Hai Greedy. You know? I mean, isn't it pathetic that this is still here? These ideas are still here? But I do suggest in my book that they have begun at last to recede into the globing of history. Why? We're maturing, we're growing up. So I see the third generation curse, if you like. Something talked to me by Francis Yeo. He's in there too. I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say about it, but I don't think he'll mind. Malaysia has reached that threshold, third generation curse now. You're going to tell me people are not going to squirt out another generation? It's happening as we speak. Look around at the kids today, those in primary and secondary school. They don't resemble us, Robert, you and me, our time. They don't resemble us in the 60s and 70s, primary school 60s and secondary school 70s. They're not like that. The Chinese of Kuala Lumpur, those kids, Form 4, Form 5, Mandarin is their language now. They speak Mandarin among each other. They're beautiful, tall, strong. You know, we can see that the stock is improving. But never, the twain's not meeting. Now this does not fit in Tunku's view. Tunku Abdul Rahman did not want this, my dad didn't want this. You know, the first generation of Malaysians, this is not the way it's going. What I'm saying is that's the way the second generation screwed up our country. We're stuck with this now. Now, can we now reconstruct, not a nation, reconstruct our concept of this nation to accept that, to accept LGBT, to accept paganism, to accept animism if you wanted to accept atheism, to accept it all on the basis that each of these constituents, whatever they are, have attained the maturity to know that they don't need to crush anybody else to be who they are. I think we're there. I really do. I think Malaysian society is ready for it. I think even Mr. Lim Tiang and his colleagues in the Citizens Declaration, I think that's what. Well, no, I don't know about them. I rejected them when I was invited to join this group. Because they say Save Malaysia is their slogan. And I asked, Save Malaysia for what? Or Save Malaysia from what? Oh, corruption, you know, yeah. You know, I don't think so. I don't know whether we save Malaysia. I think Malaysia saves us. I think you've got to respect this. It's something almost divine, something beyond human. And therefore, to stop, in a way, humanizing it too much, by putting all this blame on one man and his little wife. You know? Yeah, there's kleptocracy at a level that boggles the mind. Yeah, things need. I mean, there's crime, but we have law. Look, let the system take care of it, but the system is us. And if the system were to respect us a bit more for who and what we are, I think we'll be all right. So the point is, the country is our stories. The country is us. But if you don't know your story, sorry for you, but how do you know where you stand? And if you don't know where that, how do you know where you're going? So the problem with a nation like Malaysia, which never existed in truth, and is an artificial construct, 100 years ago, an entirely imported labor force, creating products, goods, entirely for export. Why do they worry so much about pendatang? Rubber is a pendatang from Brazil. Oil palm is a pendatang from West Africa. Who is not a pendatang in this country? The country itself is a pendatang. So we know that all of this that we wrestle with every day is coming from insecurity and fear, loss of cultural identity, or shibboleth. How do we know? I made a lady cry inadvertently when I wrote an essay that explained how the Tudor, Madam, I'm sorry, don't get offended, but the Tudor came to this country in 1972. The same year Kentucky Fried Chicken came. First outlet opened 72, franchise 73. One Aziza, one Ismail, God bless her, Anwar's wife, prides herself on being one of the first neighbors to Tudong. And she remembers the day and date, the way some remember the day they gave up smoking sometimes. Sometime March or April 72. So to suggest that this aspect, this image of Malaysian is rooted and old and as intrinsic to our culture, well, as intrinsic to our culture as Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I refer to it as KFC to the world. And that was terribly disrespectful. I admit it was a little bit low, so she tried. And I was criticized for not recognizing the spiritualism of what's driving this and all that. Yeah, right, Cubute. Yeah, right, Farida. Please, you know, we're still who we are. What do you think they're wearing under the hijab? Well, let's not ask, I know. How do I know? Was that the Bukit Bintang, Bukit Bintang KL, you know, the Arab Atom. They're wonderful women. They're not afraid of eye contact. That's what you see. Boy, do they work it. They cross their legs and, oh my God, that's silver diamante. Sling back pumps. What else? Look, it's a choice. Right? And if you choose it, you impart to it grace and dignity and validity, and it's beautiful. But if it is imposed, I mean, come on. If it's imposed, it becomes mean and closing, constricting in the heart, you know. No more compulsion in Islam or anywhere else, but you choose it, and you have a right to be respected for that choice. So that's the thing that I think we don't have yet, not enough, but we're going to have to get it. RESPECT. You tell me what it means to me. When Dr. Mahathir was 6 months into the Prime Ministership, oh no, I'm sorry, a year, he received fan mail at that time, letters, with stamps. He had to lick them. It's amazing. And his wife was opening these letters at the dinner table or tea table, and they go, oh, look at this, Dad. Somebody called you great leader. And you, oh dear great leader. Oh, I'm a great leader now, he said. But the man doesn't lack a sense of humor, okay? He said, well, he won't show it to you. I'm a great leader now, he said, ha 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 ha. And then he said the following, he said, you know, it'll be great, it'll be nice if they love me. But if they don't, then they will have to respect me. I mean, it'll be okay if they respect me. They don't have to like me, but they will have to respect me. And if they neither like nor respect me, they can fear me. And that one step over the line is what makes him, and you and me, us. He understood that, and that's what makes a very powerful political leader. Love for preference, respect for necessity, fear if all else fails, and it worked. So, enough of the fear. Why should we? Are we afraid? Going to jail? Hishamuddin Rais came to my launch in KL, shook my hand, made lots of wefis and pictures, and said, got his copy of the book and said he's going to look forward to getting Sungai Buloh prison stabbed near rubber stamp. On the front desk, I want to have your book in prison, then you really arrive. Go to prison now and become a hero, makan free. Almost a saint. Get your book banned and suddenly you're the greatest writer. You know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. So, are we afraid? No, I don't think so. Back in '86 even, I was writing this down. What happens when we stop fearing the ISA, the Internal Security Act, which was exercised just a year after that in Operation Malang? And even then I was aware that there are enough sectors of our political body politic who see these draconian, suppressive, stern laws, detention without trial, indefinite. That's scary, right? But they have seen this now, they have seen it hollow. You go in there, you come out, you go straight to Parliament. The longer you stay in there, the higher your rank when you come out. If you can manage to make it 20 years, you've got the presidency of a party waiting for you. So we cease politics as a sideshow. It doesn't intrude into us, into our daily lives anymore. Worship as we wish, live as we wish, eat as we wish. And if we need to live separately, live and let live, why not? I'm finding it nicer to enjoy our differences. I really do. I love our different foods, our clothes, the way we talk, the way we think, the way we worship, who we worship, or whether we worship or not. I love that. And I'm noticing that this is actually becoming, this is optimism, I grant that. This is optimism, but I don't think it's blind. I think the evidence is in the negative. The evidence is that we haven't killed each other. We haven't drawn blood since 1969. That is an achievement, and that is not our government's achievement, that is our achievement, it's your achievement. We've become a very beautiful people, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion. We've become a tremendous people. That is why Malaysians abroad, regardless of who they are here, you bump into another Malaysian in Rio, or Quebec, or Stockholm, immediately you're talking pidgin, PJ, Bazaar. Hey, Ipo Malima! You know, you're back to who you are. It's amazing, this identity, because you're not aware of it. Yeah, this is the remarkable thing. It only emerges out. And it is so Malaysian in that regard. So, you know, strangely, I'm not pessimistic of the future. Pessimistic of the party political system, yes, and what they might try and take down as they go down, but I see them going down. Just don't jump on that bandwagon. Why, it's crashing. You know, why ride the Titanic when you know it's the Titanic? You know? So I fear that they're going to hurt us, or try to. And I think they're going to be disappointed when we're not. So, you know, I think we're going to get there. I think we'll be all right. I think Java's going to come back, but I don't think he's going to come back into the digital medium. Here's something I'd like to pass to you, Java, and then you respond to this, and we'll see where it goes from there. In the past, the year of the net, Malaysian Journey was published in 1993. The internet came here in 1994, and Time magazine called 1995 the year of the net. I think most of you would have gone onto the net around that time, mid-90s. I was among the earliest ones, amazingly, for a Luddite, old school guy. My Jaring membership was 4 digits. But here's the interesting thing. Publishing has risen 20% year on year since. It's amazing. It seems to me that the readers do not care for anything between your métier, the digital métier, in the moment, and this. And newspapers, magazines, and journals are just crashing. And we know that. There's no denying that. They're just dying. All the newspapers are dying, journals are dying, periodicals are dying, but books are booming. And so therefore, and look at this, I'm standing here as living proof that this works. This can compete with him. Malaysian Insider, you're there, internet, media, all the time, call it up, it's there. A book comes out once every 5 years and people buy this and there seems to be nothing in between. But I think if these are the two twin polarities of literature and journalism, fine, because that is a good filtration. You're not going to waste too much. You know how much time you waste on social media. So interestingly, the complementarity of media and basically media, is the moment and forever. Right now and decades hence. I think that's okay. I think that's great. But I do think it's the end for newspapers and journalism, and it's a shame because that means it's an end for my métier. I am a master of the journalistic craft. I'm sorry about that, Java. I know, and I apologize for that. It sounds terrible, but it's what I've done for 30, 40 years. That's how I work. It doesn't work in the digital medium. So to be reduced to Facebook status updates on cycling around the hills of Singapore, well, that's fine. You know, there was a time I looked quite good in spandex. And I love that feeling of titanium. So, it's cool, but I think people want more and better, but they're not expecting it from what they know they can get. So quality online journalism will always be welcome, and nothing in between until quality perspective thinking. That's us. I'll stop. Open it up to
I do want to open it up to the audience. Two things that Gramsci said just reminded me, seem to encapsulate what you just said. Optimism of the spirit, pessimism of the will. Pessimism of the will is because you have an intellectual, critical view of the current reality, but the optimism of the spirit enables you, and I think you articulated that very well. But Gramsci said something else, and you talked about the 2 years, which are going to seem to stretch like an infinity for us. I've said this before, so forgive me those of you who've heard me say this. The old is dying, but the new cannot yet be born, and in the interregnum, all kinds of morbid symptoms appear. Excellent. Precisely. No, it's Gramsci. From prison, by the way, in the prison diary. Okay, let's open up some questions. I'm going to get somebody to help me pass the microphone around the room. Let's stack up 3 or 4 questions, both to Java. Slightly eclipsed. Perhaps people also want to know about the inside story of Malaysia Insider. That would be an interesting reflection from the 3rd generation. Who wants to answer first? Raymond, Dave. Penang audiences are never like this. Leslie.
It's a great pleasure, Rehman Rashid, to hear you. My most recent incarnation in this country was in the Canadian High Commission in 1998. One of the books, I'd been in Malaysia before in the 60s, but your book, Malaysian Journey, was introduced to me then, and it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity now to actually meet you face to face. My name is Leslie James. There's a cliche that people get the government they deserve. Would you say that Malaysians fit that cliche?
Yes. Next question. The question is why, but yes. Yes. Oh my God, you know, I mean, you people have been voting these people. The question is why. And I think over the past 3 elections, it's been coming up. People realize something about the past 2 elections. Okay, the 1969 elections, 2 things happened in those elections. The government lost, the alliance government lost its 2/3 majority, and it lost its simple majority of the popular vote. It took 40 years for the country to re-deliver the same verdict, and the country was so smart, the electorate. In 2008, they took away the 2/3, and in 2013, they took away the popular vote. So you see, they spread it over 2 elections, not both in one at once, because the last time they did both at once, 1969 alliance. Now they spread. You think our voters are not mature? I think that was an incredibly mature thing. Bearing in mind that the elections prior, the 2004 elections, 9/10 majority of parliament, that was huge. Pak Lah coming in. It wasn't for Pak Lah, it was, as I said in chapter 1, it was bye-bye Mahathir, woohoo! The great exhalation of relief at the final departure of Mahathir, and that, but nobody said this. As far as I can see, none of the bloody commentators have said this also yet. That it showed how much Malaysia can still speak in one voice. The only problem was it wasn't the voice of cheering somebody new. It was a boo, go home to Mahathir. So happy that he's out. But the nation was happy as well. 9/10 majority of parliament. That's Idi Amin standards. That's Robert Mugabe standards. But this was genuine and sincere. So the nation does work as one. And Mahathir did succeed in uniting us with his retirement. Which hurt him so badly, you know, that my God, I never got that much. His maximum triumph in elections was on his debut, 1982. Oh, they were sexy. They were sexy. I was just a new journalist and it was a sexy time. Mahathir, Siti Hasma, and Medina, and then Musa, and that gorgeous Peruvian lady. And oh God, it was glamorous, it was sexy, it was modern, it was young, it was dynamic, it was great. One of the first political articles I wrote for the LST, and Rodin Sopri asked me to do this, was to write for my generation, I was 25, 26, And I wrote without any compunction at all that Mahathir was going to get all first-time voters. Everybody going to vote for the first time in 1982 would go for the two M's. And I was absolutely right. They were glamorous and sexy. He scored a 60.2 something % vote, popular vote. I go a lot on the popular vote as opposed to the breakdown of seats. In 2004, Abdullah achieved 64.5. There's never been a higher popular vote majority for anyone. And within 5 years, he lost it all. From 9/10 to less than 2/3. It was a remarkable thing. But you see, what I'm trying to get at is Malaysia spoke as one. It was either a solid hoorah in 2004 and a complete shunning in 2008. We are not that divided as you might think. Our politics, yes. Our party politics, yes. But we as a people, no. Look at the, and I'm not being rhetorical. Look at the numbers. For 12 hours after the last votes are counted and tabulated, for 12 hours your nation stands naked before you. And for 12 hours you see us as we are. And as reporters, journalists, election night writers and leader writers for the next day, we see that. Within 12 hours the presses start running and the spin is on. But then again, we were I won't include you in this, that we were agents of that spin, of course. But the point is, you can't be a good spin doctor unless you know the ailment you're fixing. So at least we knew. And I know enough now to be able to say, yeah, our nation is actually quite more mature than keys and trees and umbrellas on your ballot box. We know. And the message is serious and stern. So now I'm wondering, can we do this radical thing? Can we shun no choice politics? You look at your ballot paper and there's nobody there you like. Do you have to choose anyone at all? You know, because these people have grown used to this kind of ballot charade, you know, it's like, so who do I vote for? This one? No, this one. Oh, this one can. Okay, this one. And people have fallen for things like saying, put a cross against the one you don't like. Because that's what a cross means, you're crossing him out. If we haven't matured from there, if we don't know better, then we really should not be allowed to vote. I don't want to get into that argument, you know, whether or not there ought to be minimum educational standards for a voter, you know, where do you draw the line, yeah? But I think we have done enough to delay. Our destiny is not denied. Delayed. But I think we've delayed it a generation or two now, and I think that's long enough. I believe that our people are now mature enough to not really be crushed by that. So, I don't know. Yes to your question, but not necessarily going forward because of this loss of faith in the political system without a concomitant loss of faith in our society. We still have faith in our society, we still like our food, and we still like each other. None of us likes our political system now. So, loss of faith in politics is not loss of faith in the nation. If anything, I think our faith is actually growing because we are seeing that, hey, no problem, all this, it's been persisting for what, a decade now? We're alive. Although we are a laughing stock and we look hideous in the eyes of the world and we look foolish and shameful. But of course, the Australian correspondents, the TV people, ABC Four Corners who came in here, they're not here. They're not listening to me. Do they know Malaysia? Do we? Thank you, Mr. James.
Can I pick up any other questions from the floor? This is... Listen. Oh no.
I can hear you.
He's making all kinds of odd signals at me. He's trying to pick me up. Let me pick something up that you said earlier. I was slightly surprised because you said that you were almost condoning a culture of impunity for those who've done grave crimes. That's what we call them.
Yeah.
One of your fellow hacks, journalists, Tom Fuller, New York Times correspondent for the last 12 years in Southeast Asia. He just wrote his farewell piece, a long, long, long piece before he's returning to the States. And looking right across the region, from Thailand to Indonesia to the Philippines to Singapore, Vietnam and so on, there was one word that he seemed to him, perhaps too meekly in your view, that captured the political culture of the region, and it was impunity. That was the word that he used and highlighted and ran the particular story, which can take different forms because there are different political institutions and setups and so on and so on. But he said it was very, very characteristic. Isn't it a problem if you actually let these bastards off in the way that you did seem to be suggesting at the beginning, although later you also said, well, let the law take its own course and so on and so on. So you kind of recanted on it, but the earlier statement seemed to be quite strongly and powerfully to say we can almost rise above these hooligans.
I think we should get the money back.
Yeah.
I think money is important. And maybe if you cannot get the money back, then selling the assets and rings and bangles and Birkins and shoes and maybe that. But what do you want? Do we put them in jail? Mm-hmm. Or do we send them on the Marcos exit thing? You know, go to Hawaii? The last resort? If that is what the nation wants, then yes, go ahead. I mean, string them up. I don't want that personally. Actually, personally. Once again, I'm not speaking as an advocate or something. I just don't know what to do that would. All right.
But would you like the Marcos exit strategy? Don't forget, at Manila Airport, the airplane couldn't take off because there was too much gold on board. It's a lot.
I know, it hasn't done it.
But what's interesting, given the relative impunity that Ronald Reagan offered the Marcoses, what it also meant, of course, in the very current presidential election in the Philippines, who is the leading candidate for vice president? Marcos's son. So you have, you have generational, because the culture of impunity.
Okay, do we have examples of other than the Marcos example, Shah of Iran? Yeah, that garbage style that could not find a port to call, wandering around like the Flying Dutchman. Yeah? Marie Celeste. How did it help Iran's future? And how did Marcos? No different. The Philippines is as corrupt and goonly and goldy and gunny as ever. So, I mean, I'm more concerned about a better future for us as opposed to exacting just retribution. That's me personally. The money must come back, and if the law says courts do this and it goes this way, okay. But otherwise, okay, I'll tell you this though. There's not much about Nigerian rose mining here. In fact, surprisingly little, according to those who have read the book and my publisher. And you're not very Nigerian. How come? And the true answer is this: I believe that there will be, in the fullness of time, footnotes in history. Not even that. I believe they will be lost, forgotten, ignored, and shunned. And they will have nothing to say. In history will have nothing but contempt and derision to cast upon them. And Anwar has been in jail for how long now, and he doesn't suffer that. Yeah. And these people are not in jail and they can't cross the street without people spitting at them. So I know what it's like to be shunned. I know what it's like to be hammered on the internet for 10 years when I was supporting Patla. It is a punishment. It is a punishment. It is eternal. It is a life sentence. You live in shame and humiliation. There's nowhere you can go. Ananda Krishna's yacht once in the past 6 months appeared in Naples, off Naples, Italy. The Malaysian Prime Minister and his wife were in Italy attending some kind of thing. The Italian radio broadcast, in Italian, of course, it's Italy. The spending lady is back. Mrs. Shopper is back. Italy. Ananda Krishna's yacht. No play. So, this kind of shame, how do you recover from that? I don't want to bring back MH370, I mean I don't want to go back there, but our performance as a nation in the wake of that awful thing humiliated us more than anything else I could possibly have imagined. So we have rubbed the faces of our incompetence, we have rubbed that into the faces of the world. There can be no greater shame. We lose a bloody aircraft and we perform like that in terms of damage control or spinning. This shame, I think, is the punishment for these people. Because I don't see how anything else can actually contribute to pemulihan, rehabilitation of our national pride. So I think we will, that's why I say a divorcing of our people from the supposed government, and then we keep them on their toes by no longer being afraid of them. I'm not, are you? You shouldn't be. People are coming up with their, oh, seditious. Oh, please, you know, that's a joke now. It's like making fun of my word use. So I'm thinking, I don't know, and I don't want to gainsay you on this one, you know, because come on, this is awful, all right? These are billions, man. And you look, oh, it's disgusting. You walk onto the aircraft and every minister's wife has a goodie bag on their seat and it's got, oh, Ferragamo and Coach, oh yes, and Hermes scarves, you know, $10,000 to $20,000 worth of goodies from the Arab friends. It's, even they feel creepy. But you know something, the contempt of the people for these characters has led them to a devil may care, goddamn you all, if you don't have it, I got it. I got the Birkin, I got the Birkin. It's disgusting, but God is great. Nobody lives forever, well, except maybe Mahathir. I don't know, but I still think when somebody stands up and attempts to harangue you, browbeat you, intimidate you into submission and compliance, and you laugh, what's he going to do? You know, laugh at those bastards. I can't because this is going to sound really weird and maybe a little creepy. I'm sorry for them. My heart goes out to them. I wish they could get something together to stop making themselves and us look so stupid. Because I don't see these people as having been the architects of this situation that we're facing. I see them as victims of history. It just goes up there. They don't have the will to make the best of it. They're not really leaders. They're just put there. Look at the dynastic nature of it all. How many sons do we have who have tried to rise? Mr. Lim's son, Ishamuri Hussein, Najib Razak. They didn't want to be Prime Minister any more than Sukarno within the third of Kelantan, or never wanted to. They go in there and they do it. So this is where the cynicism comes from. Now I think that they're going to be less relevant. And I think maybe for people like that, maybe that's the worst punishment you can give. Just laugh at them and ignore them. But get the money back. Get the money back. Did the Philippines get the Marcos gold back?
Not all.
He's not looking for it.
Not all.
And we'll probably never be able to get back all of this either. Oh, what the hell? So what? We get our fingers out and we can make money writing books. or whatever it is you do. Get beyond politics. Like most other developed nations I know, except for Australia where it's a 3-ring service. But they like it that way. The poor galahs.
Let's take it, yeah. Let's
Go on.
Does the rise...
I can hear you.
Yeah. Does the rise of Bernie Sanders in the presidential race in the US have anything to teach us here in Malaysia in terms of galvanizing the ordinary man on the street?
He's done that?
Thank you, Vernon. For those of you who didn't hear it, it's the rise of Donald Trump. I mean, that's Nazi salute. What are you doing?
You know, we were talking about change of government and revolution and stuff like that. And recently I read in a magazine article about how the Arab Spring wasn't as sexy as it should have been. And it pointed to Tunisia as being the only country that actually has progressed in terms of stuff that took place there. And it was because of the NGOs. And here we are in Penang, basically the hotspot of NGOs for Malaysia. I mean, there are more NGOs formed here, thanks to Dato' Anwar over there, he set up quite a number of, right? So that's why I'm asking Bernie Sanders, the galvanizing of ordinary men, etc. He may be the game changer of American politics. Would he be able to teach us a lesson here in Malaysia?
I know bloody I don't give a flying. I don't. Bernie Sanders thinks they built the pyramids to store grain. By Joseph.
No, that was Carson.
Was it?
Yeah.
You see, I don't really care. Why should you even think like that, Vernon? What has that got to do with us?
Lessons to be learned.
No, none. Zilch. No bloody foreigner can teach us anything we need to know. If you haven't figured it out for ourselves, if we haven't figured it out for ourselves, what on earth can we look to? Places like America, for example? Was it? Donald, oh, come on. Come on, we're going beyond politics, that's my thesis. Collective responsibility and collective blame.
Yeah, exactly. Collective responsibility.
Collective responsibility and collective blame. Do not blame your government for the crap that you have to live with if you can't do something about it yourself. At the same time, you take the responsibility for those divisions that the government is working on, or these politics. I shouldn't say the government. I respect my government. It also includes my civil service. But these politicians, why do we give them that face, and why do we think that they are the ones who show us the way forward, Vern? If that be the case, I mean, you've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 30 or more. You see what I mean? Collective responsibility is us. They are not superior. I don't get why we are still hoping to find leaders. Saviors. There was one. God rest him. You know, they come along once every couple of thousand years. You'll get a savior, he'll come down on a raft from on high. But no, man, what is the point of democracy if it is we use the vote to vote for kings? We don't vote for kings, we summon kings. I really see the diminution of politics as a very strong influence in our nation going forward. We have to go beyond leadership because none of us can represent all of us. Look at us, look at this audience. This is only how many 30, 40 people here. Look at this majmukness, this polyglot, multicultural, and it's not just your faces and your backgrounds, it's your thoughts, you know. How you're responding to this evening is different for all of you, and you know that. So I'm trying to say, let's not hope for somebody to be a game changer. The game has never changed. Well, not for 100 years. Why do we need that? Because they'll only disappoint you. Watch. Aren't people calling for Obama to be investigated now, to be indicted? No, let's not keep taking the best of us, putting them up there and shooting them full of holes, destroying their lives, ruining their legacies. Why? It's show business. And there ain't no business
It's like show business, yes. Mark?
I just had one observation I want to ask you about, to get your observation on, and that is my generation in my 60s and generation in their 40s in Malaysia, they seem to be secure in their political view and the view of the country and where the country may or not be going. But if I ask students in their 20s, they seem to be completely and utterly lost.
But you know, I recently met a journalist of nearly 40 years old who hadn't been aware that Singapore was once part of Malaysia. We have this problem. They don't know. I don't know what they're being taught. But here's something else that I say that makes me think, how long are we going to carry on looking for people to blame for this? Why don't you know? Shouldn't your parents have some responsibility like mine took for my brothers and I, our education? Why don't they know? Because the problem is, if you don't know and you don't care, you never will know, will you? And you can end up walking for the edge and be 38 years old and never knew that Lee Kuan Yew was once a Malaysian. Actually, that does sound kind of weird, doesn't it? Why the ignorance? Because you're leaving it all to those damn fools in schools, teaching your kids what they think ought to be. So I think parents have abandoned an awful lot of their responsibilities over the past couple of generations, and they were encouraged to do so when the NEP came along. Or we have to revise our historical view, change our perspectives. Suddenly, kau ni semua pendatang tahu. Jangan lupa ya. Don't forget you're all bloody immigrants. That didn't happen before that, because we all were. Come the NEP, and suddenly we are divided into this artificial, things, and we allowed it. We are the most accommodating people I've ever come across in the world. We keep taking it, punch after punch after punch, and we keep swallowing it, absorbing it. Brilliant. Can you imagine what we can achieve once that resilience and that durability is turned towards something more productive than merely gritting your teeth so you don't smash them, out of your own nation, which we did in 1969. One experience, only a couple of hundred deaths, not big. 10 times more many people died in the 9/11 thing. Suicide bombers are taking out as many as that every week now. So I think we did very well. Not that much blood spilled for a tremendous lesson to be learned. And we have proved ourselves resilient and mature and extremely disciplined when it comes to these things. But now it's time for all that we have learned in the last 50 years to start pushing away these people who are bringing us down and taking our money and not even giving us any cachet in return, which at least Marcos gave the Philippines for a while.
I just wanted to add to that this moment. It's interesting, your question is very interesting because I think we have become a country that outsources everything. We outsource our kids to our teachers, to our maids. We outsource blame, we don't take blame, we take credit and cash. And we outsource our planning to consultants who don't take responsibility. So today, no one's has been accountable for all the losses in the country. Malaysia Airlines, you name any scandal, no one has gone to jail for it, right? It struck me that at the point when we interviewed Mahathir last week, after Insider was closed down, we interviewed Mahathir. So you got to ask yourself one question. Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, 91 years old, is giving an interview to a website that no longer exists. And spent 2 hours with this. So you got to ask yourself why. It just struck me that he didn't want to take the blame for anything. He didn't want to apologize. And I didn't want him to apologize, because how do you forgive him for what has happened, right? But he said something which was very interesting. He said, I'm the only Prime Minister who won 5 elections in a row with 2/3 majority. So we allowed him, didn't we? We all allowed him. And when he retired, he stepped down. As Rehman said, we exhaled in relief and we got his successor 9/10 of the parliament. So he was right. He blamed us for him. He said, look, if you blame me for Najib Razak, then you blame Hussein on for me. Where's the blame going to stop? So look, this man is never going to say sorry. But we are a sorry nation expecting to say sorry. Right? So we have to stop, and we won't. This thing about outsourcing, we outsource everything, and that's why we have a generation that doesn't know anything, and they don't need to know anything.
And that's the thing.
They don't need to know anything. They're cocooned in their own world. They're just waiting for the latest PS4, PS5, Samsung 25, iPhone 85. That's all they want, and they'll buy and sell on eBay and everything, and say they're entrepreneurs. They'll make some money. Selling a pebble from Langkawi, a seashell which Rehman would have identified as something from Tanjung Karang perhaps, and they'll make money, right? So we have become the tempurungs. We are a multitude of tempurungs.
This is a couple of minutes before 10. Yeah. And this is usually when we wrap up. But let me take 2 or 3 more questions briefly from the floor, and now something that's authority. I'll start with you.
Hi. So Rehman, having read both your books, I came here to see myself. The first book, exciting, full of energy, enthusiasm. Your love for the country and your hope for the future was clearly evident in that book. And in the second book, in Peninsula, that tone was to me a bit subdued, and I wanted to come and see myself if you felt that way. I guess the question is why? And why you use belief? I wouldn't put it as belief.
That one was written by a 36-year-old, this one was written by a 61-year-old. Honestly, Adrian, you know, it is.
But here's the thing, so I'm sitting here, I'm listening to you speak, and I feel the energy, and I feel the love, and I feel the hope for the country. But it's not, well, it's subdued again for me.
Wow,
So
that's because I've got 30 pictures of you. It's showbiz.
Oh, last question.
So, thank you, though. But I appreciate the observation. I do, because I felt it too. I quite like it, though. I like this is a more sober book. That book, I kind of figured I still hadn't finished having sex. I still had, love ahead. I was only 36, I mean, it could have, that's gone. That's over. But it is bizarre. Personally, when I saw the photograph of the Guinea, KLCC, and they had begun to display the book side by side. Now, I wanted the book to have the same surface area, A5, because it's safe paper. It's simply that, this is A5. So nothing has to be trimmed. It's completely just folded A4 in half. And it's also handy. You can hold, a Malaysian Journey came up in that format, and you can hold it in one hand and hold onto the strap of your LRT in the other. I thought that was quite good. So I wanted the book to have that same size, but I did not expect that it would be the same width, or what do you call it? That thickness. So they look like companion volumes. And people are sort of like, today, buying them together like this. And when I see them put side by side, it was kind of kind as well. So a friend of mine took the picture, sent it to me and said, Kinokoriya KLCC, the Twin Towers of Malayan literature. But the idea that there are 23 years between this book, and not just 23 years, but these 23 years, right? This generation, a generation between my books. I feel so blessed and privileged to be able to do this. And because I did not write between them. So in a way, this one generation between books, I didn't know this, I had to survive it, but that is the significance, I think, for me personally. For you to raise this makes my heart so thank you, that a reader can pick it up, which means that you have now journeyed with me for 23 years, So bless you, sir. Thank you very much. And I've enjoyed reading my home safar.
That epilogue that didn't make it to the book?
Oh, no. I'd only just begun, and I thought, no, I want to stop it there and not here. It was going into some of the things that I've been mentioning earlier tonight, that kind of thing. This business of peripheralizing politics and collective responsibility, that. And it was so polemical. I felt it just didn't fit with the rest of it. So that's crap.
Well, thank you for
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have you copyrighted that phrase, the Twin Towers? Oh, him. Copyrighted. We had one too.
One more?
Anwar, and then
I think I resonate so much with you about multiversity that is Malaysia.
Thank you. That's what.
And this multiversity, surprisingly, is actually getting larger and larger.
Yes.
With the whole generation of new kinds of talents from all over the world that are part of Malaysia now. Malaysia, my second home, is again bringing
That's right.
dozens and dozens of people. Millions of tourists are wandering around the country. Our federal system, the tribes in different places, each also asserting themselves in different kinds of ways. And I I think this is something that keeps the country strong, the way it's getting more and more diverse, and the openness, the fact that the digital and other things are also going on. People are twittering across the borders, like twittering in universe, whether it's Facebook and so on, again is something that's increasing that diversity. One of the things that's interesting is our federal system and the role of the royalty. And I think the diversity of the royalty itself is a fascinating topic, and many people are saying, hey, look at Johor, the way some of the royalty is also speaking out and celebrating this diversity, because they themselves, if they look at their own DNA, are so diverse, and the story of the diversity of our royalty could be the subject of many books to be written outside this country.
Do you have questions?
So the question is, what do you think about the role that royalty could play in this whole process?
That's going to take too long. It's generational, and I think they will stand up. Abi?
I was just going to ask you, what is the alternative to this question of leadership?
Collective.
Do we have to dismantle anything? Or
No, I think we need management. I don't think we need leaders. I think we need managers. We need competent technocrats and professionals to get their job done. Frankly, I think the civil service offers a template. Really. I'm thinking like the idea that we might have for KPs and DGs and KSUs and KSNs, I'm thinking worse comes to worse, if Parliament becomes a bloodbath, if it becomes people leaping at each other, throwing chairs at each other, country has survived so much, in the past 30 years, if you think about it, ever since the 86 recession onwards, the Asian financial. Come on, our civil service is one of the great unsung strengths of our people. I mean, seriously, we had this scare in the 70s with it's in the book, the infiltration of Islamism and fundamentalism and oppositionism. We had that, but we've gone through it, and I think what came out of that was a recognition that the civil service is actually what keeps the country running. At the time when Muhyiddin was being fired and all these kind of things, I did something on Facebook that, had Najib and introducing Ahmad Zaid Hamidi as his new deputy, and our KSN. And I wrote a thing like, who's been running the country in all of this? This guy, the KSN, the civil service. So I think it's like, it's been mentioned, Anwar has mentioned it just now as well, the rising across the board, the broad spectrum, full court press of Malaysians rising to their responsibilities. Do you realize, Arman, when we're so critical of the way we are run, we are in a way shirking our responsibilities. When we criticize the education system for not educating our kids, we are shirking our responsibilities. We educate our kids. Look, a child of 5 begins schooling, and he should know how to write his name by then, because otherwise somebody's going to write it for him. Now, when parents can make babies with such impunity, but not give a damn about raising them, that is how I'm at. Look, all through school, I was rivals with a couple of in essay writing and appearing in school magazines, and we would have debates like this, we'd have conversations like this all the way through school. That's where this came from. And now I look at them, and he and his wife are both as literate as you can imagine, as perfectly fluent in English as you could want, and their children don't speak English at all. So I asked him, how come you and your wife are even today conversing in English and talking to each other in English and fine English, nothing broken, rigid about it, but you're okay. And then we look at each other and say, there's nothing we can do. Peer pressure is much, much stronger than parent pressure. But, like I said, look at the responsibility. Stop looking to teachers to teach your kids and politicians to tell you what to do, and ulama and imam to tell you who God is. I get this, and I've always deferred, backed off. No more, I'm too old to back off now, So don't judge me, because if someone's judging you, and if someone is judging you, then I'll wait for that person to judge me, okay? Don't do that. That's going to have to spread. If we, meaning I'm going to die soon, but you're going to be around for a while. If we can pass this thing, and if there's no sense of a baton passing to it, But it's like, it's happening. It's happening for Dr. Anwar. It's happening for you and me. It's happening for him. And it's happening for that lady over there, or that 19-year-old somewhere over there. It's happening across the board. We're going to be all right, Anwar. We're going to be all right. I mean, I really feel that we're getting there. We're looking at each other and not seeing enemies, because we're seeing the enemies in the party political system. And they don't care about that. Why? Because each one of these parties has enough members to be a self-contained unit. They serve their memberships. And they don't give a damn about anything else. So why should anybody else give a damn about that? Next question.
I like the idea of we should be managed by the level of management rather than political parties. But my more realistic question is, what is considered mature voters?
I have an answer, amazingly, because I thought about this, and it might seem too simplistic, but this is it. Know your candidate and vote for someone you like. Don't vote for someone just because he's on the ballot box and you don't like the others. If there's nobody on the ballot box that you like, on the ballot paper that you like, don't vote. Why should you be asked to choose someone you despise? Just because you despise somebody else? No, you've not finished your question, right? You want the microphone back because you want to say something more.
The continuous, because in Sarawak, it is a reality that a lot of voters didn't know their candidate.
Then why vote? What are you voting for if he's a bloody stranger? What are you voting for? Who are you voting for? The party? Well, that's why we end up like this. I really believe turning away from Hobson's choices, you know.
Because we also said, because we also mentioned, I also agree with you on the points that are collective responsible. But I cannot see the possibility that I expect these people who actually never see opposition's candidate. They only see PN candidate all this while, and then they only vote for them.
I don't understand what you mean by they only see and they don't see.
So because in the interior of Sarawak, the only parties that have the access is actually PN. So, and these voters are not given
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. You mean the other parties are not allowed into the interior of Sarawak, or that they don't know how to write votes?
I think they have very, very limited access.
Access or funds?
Funding to
well, you know, we've got to get more precise on all of these things. You know, like, why are they not going into the interior to engage with the interior of right? Why are the opposition not there? Do they have no money? Or do they have no input? I don't know. I'm glad you're here though, because the book, the title caused so much trouble. Not to say trouble, but I was a bit provocative in calling it Peninsula, the story of Malaysia. You can imagine how the Sarawakians and Sabahans were. They thought I was being deliberately, but of course, just pull off the bloody plastic wrapper, open to the contents, and you'll see a chapter called Sabah and Sarawak. And that chapter will explain why the title of the book is Peninsula. And I'm pretty brazen about it. It's because this is a Peninsula view, and from the Peninsula we didn't give a damn about you. I'm cruel, but it's true. And that doesn't mean I'm contemptuous. It means I'm angry with Sarawakians and Sabahans for not standing up a little bit more, not producing your own literature, not producing your own music, not producing anything really, but sitting there waiting for something else to happen. So an old colleague of mine, James Ritchie, who has been in Sarawak for all his life, he was there 17, he's 70 now. And he was the one who educated me on that. The Sarawakians have been waiting and waiting and waiting for another James Brooke. Is that true? Because now if somebody wants to know about Sarawak, you recommend Conrad. You recommend Conrad. You recommend Almayer's Folly and Lord Jim. Somebody wants to know about Sabah, you have to read Agnes Keith, 3K Tea in Sandakan. When are Sarawakians and Sabahans going to write their own stories?
I'm going to pull you up on that. As an editor of several books on Borneo. In the 50s, you had Iban Radio, Iban Literature Bureau, and so on and so on. Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka came in the 1970s, and the Peninsula smashed all of that in the name of Malaysianization.
That's right, it's in there.
It was a So it's a little bit rich for you to say, so when you're going to stand up or whatever.
Well,
because the process was of
you got bullied.
Yeah.
You got bullied. And who is to be blamed if you get bullied? If you don't stand up to bullies, they will dominate you. They will terrorize you. Why didn't you stand up to bullies? Why didn't we? Let's stop this capitulation to being peripheralized and marginalized and looked down on. I am so angry, but I have to watch that. We're going over to Kuching and Kota Kinabalu after this. I need to explain myself. But I really do hope that this provocativeness that I have provided with the title of my book, I hope that annoys them and irritates them, because I know how proud they are. And it's just that they have deferred and capitulated. And fair enough, it was right for them to do so, because it was, we needed to have this unitary one seat at the UN thing. So what's going to be the definition of us? And it's been the Peninsula definition. It's time for that to go. King Wei was coming. King Wei.
It's very nice to hear about your optimism about the multi-faceted Malaysia of the future, right? And personally, I'm very much looking forward to that. But at the same time, I would like to point out what has happened until now, especially the grisly murders that has been taking place, right? Starting with Tan Tuya in Brunei, then you have Kevin Muraya has murdered and his body down into a oil drum, cemented, right? And then you have the banker who was shot dead in Temple, you know all that, right? And a few others too. And none of this has been answered. And I mean, the Malaysian rakyat deserve an answer for all these things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and for a country to work for future good, the rule of law is very important. So this is what I have to say.
But the rule of law is not obliged to provide the verdict that you would prefer. Apr'16 is settled to my satisfaction, and I explain so in the book. Please read my chapter, Vox Pop. Kevin Murray's investigation is still underway. And as it is with the other, that was opened up recently with the 1MDB controversies and all of this. Now, the question is not what happened, the question is how is the investigation proceeding, and the question mark is over whether that is being done. Now, once again, are we not in a position to see to that they don't forget Kevin Murray, that Kevin Murray is not forgotten? And I'm afraid we've already forgotten the name of the AmBank executive, haven't we? Thank you. Thank you very much. No, it's like, why have we just made the assumption that these things are, conspiracies being hidden under the carpet? We do need to keep this thing alive, and that is our responsibility as well. Media people, commentators, loudmouths, to make sure that nobody thinks we've forgotten. But we need to get a verdict, and when the verdict is out, we have to accept it. But we will never accept that. The Tan Tuya case is settled. You didn't realize this?
No.
As far as the law is concerned, it's settled.
But Cyril is now in detention.
Cyril, right.
Right?
Do you think that he still is holding back secrets?
I'm sure he can answer who gave him the order.
Nobody gave him the order. Oh, sorry, somebody gave him the order. But what was the order?
I don't know.
The order was Have you heard of that order before? You should have heard that order in 1997, yeah? Pi gempar dia. Go shake him up. Go get that femme fatale out. The court did not find anything to suggest that somebody had said, go get those explosives, stick them in her orifices and blow her up. And I'm prepared to, and I'm on the record with this, you can take issue with my book, because it's in there, and I will stand by it. And I say, I didn't find anything in the Tan Tuya verdict and in the proceedings which I followed minutely. I'm a reporter. as much as I could without actually being there. Okay? And that's using my contacts and person, not just relying on the media. I think the verdict fit the facts as we knew them. And if anybody knows any better, and you're not speaking up, then there's nothing to talk about. Do you know any better? Does Jahaba know any better? And if you don't, then why should you think that it isn't that? It fits the facts. Anyway, I explained in some detail why I feel this way. If you disagree with me, disagree with me. But find something more substantial than, of course it had to be Rosman. Of course it was Rasa Baginda.
Actually, Rehman's right. I unfortunately know Rasa Baginda personally.
So do I.
Yeah, and we've all met him many times as an analyst, as a friend. And when he came out, he actually sat down and he explained it. He said, ask me any question. The only thing that was strange was, in his answers, was he never referred to Altan Dunia by name. He just kept calling her the deceased, never referred to her by name. But I think the court found evidence to show this too killed her. Was it on someone's orders? They didn't ask the question, it was never raised. They confessed to blowing her up. I think it's such a Malaysian thing that we think there's a string of conspiracy between Altan Dunia, Kevin Marias, and dead ex-banker Najadi. I don't think there's any link, seriously. I think they're all random events. We like to string them up together to buttress our conviction that there's this grand conspiracy to silence a lot of people to keep the Prime Minister in power. You know, the Prime Minister is a very unlucky guy. He's the unluckiest sort to be the Prime Minister of this country. Everything is his problem. You know, he caused it. You know, I think if he had his way, he wouldn't have become Prime Minister. Seriously, he just wanted to match his father, or he was told you have to match your father. I'm sure he shouted as to match his father to become Prime Minister. And then what? And then what happened? What's it to be a Prime Minister of Malaysia? You know, I think we Malaysians really don't like killing people. You know, as a hobby or as a profession. We're not quite good at it too. You know, the Al-Maula guys, they tried to bomb the Carlsberg brewery. They failed because they shot the rocket propelled grenade to the ground. Yeah, so, you know, they tried shooting a temple. Yeah, they're not really good at it. But really, I think we really stopped this conspiracy theories. I've been on a crime desk in NST when Rehman was a leader writer. I have police contacts. I know what I saw the pictures of Kevin Marias and all that. Maybe there's something suspicious about a veterinarian trying to kill off the prosecutor prosecuting him, but to link it to 1MDB is such a stretch.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a stretch because he was not involved in the case. He did not write the draft charge sheet. A deputy public prosecutor was actually detained with Tan Sri Rashpal and Jessica Sidhu. Same day, his name was never identified. He confessed to the draft charge. And he doesn't report to Kevin Marias. And all this has actually come out. We just choose to read and make up our conspiracies. If you're a reader of any media in Malaysia, please read all. Not just what you think is the truth. You have to read all to compare.
Only read by chapters.
And that really is what it's all about in Malaysia. We just want to believe what we're believing.
I read it all for you and sum it up.
The facts will be very different.
Lovely camera.
Friends, it's 10:30. It's the latest we've ever had one of our forums. I wonder why.
I talk a lot.
On the one hand, he spoke less, but I think with some very amusing and sharp insights. Please give a very warm hand to. I just can't get two images out of my head right at this moment, of course. One is the Twin Towers of Malaysian literature.
No, letters.
Letters?
Twin Towers of Malaysian letters.
Oh, letters, darling. Sorry. But the other one is even more nightmarish in its qualities. Edgar Allan Poe come to life. The man in spandex on his